All right, we're gonna do Senator Pekarsky's, I don't see Senator Suderline. Is Senator Suderline in here? Is that in here, right? All right, we're gonna do Senator Pekarsky's Senate Bill 1031, and do you wanna we'll just get on the roll and you can do some bills if you wanna do a bunch of bills. Do you want to? That's up to you. Do you hear? So we'll start with Senator Pekarsky's Senate Bill 1031. Do you have a substitute?
Yes, I do have a substitute.
So I'll move that substitute and
Second with locks.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so that substitute
Thank you.
will be before us and should be online in a minute for those of you at home. Senator Pekarsky, go ahead.
Okay. SB 1031. Okay, this is labeled incorrectly then, but I guess we can fix that. Wait. Oh wait, this is 1036. Yeah, wrong one. ADs.
This is 1036.
Yeah. Thank you. Whew. Okay, Mr. Chair. First, let me begin by thanking the many folks who have reached out to share their opinions on this bill. And I will also say this bill most definitely wins the fake news award of this session because a lot of the things that have been said about it and the things that have been written up are just simply false on their face. So I'm going to talk about the overall objective of this bill, which is to ensure that all children in the Commonwealth receive a basic education. Currently, the religious exemption allows parents to exempt their children from education with no further requirements or continued instruction. What does that mean? That means that it is 100% legal in the Commonwealth of Virginia not to educate your child if you so wish. In fact, what most people don't know is that Virginia is the only, I will say again, only state with such an exemption. And there are more than 6,000 students that are exempted from any educational requirements under this provision. I had no idea this even existed. In fact, what most people don't know is that I homeschooled for a very short period of time, was the right thing for my daughter. So I'm very well familiar with the homeschooling requirements. Fully support a parent's right to homeschool. The requirements are very basic, very easy to fulfill. Anyone can fulfill them. The approach and the rationale to this SB 1031 to strike the religious exemption provision while also making it clear in the homeschooling statute that families can elect to homeschool their children if they so wish, based on their religious beliefs with whatever curriculum they may like. So from that perspective, nothing would change for parents that are homeschooling under this provision currently. By doing so, all parents who choose to homeschool their children must comply with the basic requirements found in the existing homeschool statute. Parents of over 50,000 children already do this every year. This bill would just align the over 6,000 children currently exempted for religious reasons with the same compliance requirements. And this is an approach that has been adopted by almost all states in the United States. So there are three basic benefits to this bill. It takes school boards out of the currently required and very difficult role of both ruling on the legitimacy of a parent's religious beliefs when they seek this exemption and assessing if those religious beliefs of the child differ from those of the parents. As a former school board member, I can tell you what that looks like. You receive a letter that says family so-and-so has deeply held religious beliefs and they want a homeschool exemption. As a school board member, you just say yes. That's it. That is the one and only time that child will pass through in any way. There is zero assessment of whether or not that child will receive any education after that day. Many school boards do this differently, but that's where the bottom line is. You just say yes when somebody asks. This second benefit is it ensures that all homeschool children are treated the same and that their parents have the same obligations to make sure they reach certain basic levels of academic competence. The third benefit is that it makes it clear that families can seek to homeschool their children based on their religious beliefs or for any reason they so desire. To be clear, our current homeschool requirements are the following. Ensure that the parent is equipped to provide home instruction by requiring one of the following. Ensure ongoing instructional planning by requiring the parent to annually notify the division superintendent and provide a list of subjects the child will study during the coming year. The way I met this requirement is I sent an email. It was about 3 sentences long. This is what my child did this year. These are the subjects they studied. And you ensure the child's ongoing academic progress. This is about as basic of homeschooling requirements as one can find. Again, I know this personally. This bill has nothing to do with religion. It is not an attack on religion. This is building some equity around what the requirements are for parents who choose to homeschool their children the way tens of thousands others comply. Now, the reasons why we need this, you're going to hear from some folks who have come here today to share their stories. There are thousands of stories like the ones you're going to hear. And I'm sad that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are not here to hear these. We've passed out many letters as to why this is necessary. And I'm going to read just a few snippets from these letters so people understand what is happening with some, definitely not all, but some children and families who are taught under this religious exemption. John Matthews wrote, I distinctly remember 2 periods where my education failed to progress. The first one was when my mother stopped all my education to focus on a single literature study, setting me back a whole year in core subjects. The second period was the 18 months surrounding my sister's birth. During this time, my mother made no preparations for my education. And as a result, I did not complete any schoolwork during a time where I should have been actively preparing college applications. Because of this religious statute, I lost over 2 years of critical instructional time. Educational neglect is real. The religious exemption statute allows for a child to essentially be uneducated by their parents. How is this in the best interest of a child? Skyland Talon wrote, thinking back to the 18 years of my life is something that I've spent years avoiding. I become emotional from the neglect that I was subjected to. Being homeschooled under the religious exemption statute created an education experience that resulted in severe educational neglect. Bellamy Maloney. The lack of oversight that allowed my parents to neglect our schooling also left ample room for abuse in my home. When I could not understand my textbooks adequately without a teacher, I was beaten, isolated, and verbally abused for being stupid. This has had lasting effects on my psyche and required years of therapy to correct. Anna Lee Gallivan. First and foremost, the standards outlined by SB 1031 are very low and bare bones, to the degree that anyone who opposes their implementation is not doing so for healthy reasons. I made it through the 8th grade with less than a first grade reading level because there were no checks and balances to ensure my educational goals were being achieved. I have so many more, so many more. So this is the reason why it's needed. I'm sad if this becomes a political football, because this is about the well-being of children and their right to a very basic education. And this protects parents' rights to homeschool their children. So, thank you.
All right, so we will start with those that support. I understand that this is an emotional issue, but I'm going to ask you to be respectful of everybody that testifies on both sides of this issue. And we're going to start. We'll put up 5 minutes to start and kind of see where it goes from there. For those that support, and then we'll hear from those that oppose. So go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the subcommittee. My name is Brooke Shanks, and I'm here to speak to you about Bill 1031. I was religiously exempted from kindergarten through 12th grade. By the age of 10, I was painfully aware of how far behind I was. I looked for clues of what others were learning through conversation, ashamed to ask questions that might reveal the gaps in my knowledge. My instruction was sporadic with intermittent materials, grading my own occasional test with no explanatory guidance, and struggling with an undiagnosed severe learning disability. I quickly fell behind until my education was non-existent. As a young adult, these deficiencies became more pronounced. I was unable to gain employment, attend college, or complete basic tasks that others take for granted. This left me vulnerable to cycles of abusive relationships, homelessness, and depression. At my lowest point, after a failed suicide attempt, I remember thinking, I don't want to die, I just want to live. But without basic skills, I saw no clear path forward to self-sufficiency. Thankfully, my story did not end there. I reclaimed my education, beginning with remedial math classes on fractions at a community college, and today I am a student at UVA Law. But my journey took over a decade and was only possible because of the support of others that allowed me to focus solely on my education. Unfortunately, not all young people find themselves in such safe environments. I want to be clear, my parents had the best of intentions. However, this policy allows well-meaning parents to embark on a path that they may not be equipped to complete. If religious exemption was not an option, my parents would have followed their faith-based convictions and homeschooled me under the homeschool statute, where its requirements would have revealed those gaps in my learning. As Senator Pekarsky noted, this approach is found in 46 other states. But without proper guardrails like the ones found in this bill, children like me will continue to fall through the cracks. And just to note in comparison, in the past school years, 6,444 children ranging from kindergarten to 12th grade were religiously exempted from compulsory education requirements. For comparison, that number is greater than the total enrollment in 2/3 of our school divisions across the state. You're going to hear a lot of success stories from those who have chosen the religious exemption to homeschool their children. And I want to be clear and reiterate Senator Pekarsky's point that this is not an attack on faith-based homeschooling. There are many success stories, but those success stories do not negate the reality of stories like mine. Importantly, this bill does not hinder the continuation of those successes. On the contrary, I urge you to support Senate Bill 1031 to ensure that all children are guaranteed access to home instruction that these success stories exemplify. Thank you for your time.
My name is Eve Ettinger. I represent the Coalition for Responsible Home Education, a nonprofit founded and run by homeschool graduates who advocate for homeschool children. We strongly support SB 1031. I was homeschooled in Virginia from 6th through 12th grade under the religious exemption statute. Those who homeschool under the statute are not obligated to provide their children with an education. As a result, there were years when I was handed textbooks and told to complete them without help or guidance. There were no outside parties checking in on me or advocating for my educational needs. Everything depended on my parents being interested, willing, and able to teach me. And as the oldest of 9 kids, one-on-one time with my parents was far from assured. I got lucky. My parents did want me to be able to go to college, so I had access to textbooks, which I used to self-teach and pass the SAT. But I still had to spend nearly a decade catching up on basic things I missed. Others have not been so lucky. They're not here today. I knew many parents who used the religious exemption statute to limit their children's access to education, especially for daughters. This is currently totally illegal. Parents do not have the right to harm their children's future ability to function in society as an adult. Every child has the right to an education. Please support this bill.
My name is Annalie Gallivan, and my educational experience was harmed by the religious exemption statute as there were no legal protections in place to make sure I was being adequately educated. I was homeschooled in Midlothian from kindergarten to 8th grade. When I started 9th grade at age 15, I was barely functionally literate. This means I could read street signs, but anything more complicated than a simple stop sign came with significant complications and caused great frustration. The quality of my education in all of the subjects was equally inadequate. The ceiling for how amazing homeschooling can be is nearly limitless. Conversely, the floor for how terrible it can be is also nearly limitless. By passing this bill, you'll help protect children by raising the floor. The standards of education laid out in this bill are very low and bare bones to the point that you would almost have to try to not beat them. This bill is not an infringement on freedom or privacy, nor is it religious discrimination. It will simply protect the children who need it.
My name is Mary Bull. I support homeschooling, but no child should be homeschooled like I was. I was homeschooled for 12 years in Surrey, Virginia, under the religious exemption statute. My parents didn't have a plan. I was taught reading and basic math, but little else. When a public librarian innocently asked what we were learning, my mother stopped taking us there. I was taught to lie about what I did for school. I liked school, but I had to initiate everything, even requesting books. And my parents did not support my efforts to get outside help. Working alone with a book, I failed to teach myself biology or chemistry. We were part of a local homeschool group, but no one challenged my parents to raise their educational standards. My parents did not think they had a problem. They believed inner character was more important than school subjects. A simple set of requirements from the state would motivate parents like mine to ask for help to meet minimum basic standards and help their children avoid the educational gaps and crushing stress I experienced as a homeschooled student and adult who was forced to navigate the world with incomplete information.
My name is Rachel McGuire. I was a homeschooled kid. I am now a homeschooling mom. I support ending the religious exemption. Without the religious exemption, my parents were still able to use a Christian curriculum to give me and my siblings an adequate education. Without the religious exemption, I'm still able to teach my kids what I want them to know. My husband was homeschooled with the religious exemption, and he was denied an education and had to use remedial classes in community college to catch up. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could just say your name and that you support, I'm sorry, we've got a lot to do.
Sunny Bareford, me and my 5 siblings were homeschooled, and we are in support of SB 1031.
My name is Carmen Longoria Green. I was homeschooled for 12 years under a statute that did make requirements for my parents to actually teach me. Now, thanks to that, I am actually a lawyer with expertise in First Amendment law, and this bill is not a violation of religious freedom or religious liberty. Please vote for this bill.
All right, so now for those that oppose, I'm gonna put 7 minutes and 30 seconds on, so we make sure that we have the same amount of time. I do want to acknowledge that we're gonna stop at 7 minutes and 30 seconds. So there's a lot of you, and I think if you wanna try to, you gotta figure out how to divide it. So I apologize ahead of time, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Melody Clark, a Virginia resident, speaking on behalf of Virginia Institute Action. My heart goes out to those who feel they were somehow shortchanged in their education. Many in public school are likewise left behind by failing public schools. However, this legislation threatens all homeschool families and undermines Virginians' long-standing right to educate their children following their faith-based convictions, a right established decades before homeschooling was legalized in 1984. It jeopardizes the religious exemption that allows families to homeschool according to their deeply held beliefs. Repealing this exemption would infringe upon the rights of faith-based families and subject them to unnecessary government oversight and stress. It is the parents and guardians who are primarily responsible and know best what their children need. This bill shifts that focus of control and would transfer that authority to unelected superintendents, designees, and staff, giving them the power to judge parents' sacred, deeply held religious beliefs. Thank you. I am Melody Clark with Virginia Institute Action. We respectfully ask you to vote no on SB 1031.
Hi, my name is Raynell McGee. I have been homeschooling under religious exemption for 11 years in this state. My daughter is graduating this June. She's been accepted to over 15 universities. She's received 9 presidential scholarship offers and 12 merit-based scholarship offers. In my opinion, this bill is trying to fix a problem that, quite frankly, doesn't exist en masse. According to your testimony, Senator, you admitted that only some parents are irresponsibly educating our children. So why would this bill be passed to further hinder the parents that are doing well? In addition, you mentioned a checks and balance system that you want us to follow. However, the checks and balance system doesn't even work for public school students. Quite frankly, there are school districts all around the country where Black students in particular are 3 to 4 grade levels behind in every subject. I think that checks and balance system should be used to help the students who actually do need that support. For example, helping student attrition, teacher attrition, budget shortages, school violence, meeting adequate yearly progress, and classroom management. Parents should be allowed to decide what works best in their home, not administrators. In addition, this bill infringes upon my right to decide what works best for my family. It's unreasonable to receive that type of guidance from administrators who have training in education, but not family management, and certainly not religion. Cross-collaboration also is an issue for me because as a Richmond Public School district person, I live in Richmond Public School District. Collaborating with districts that are not homeschool friendly is frustrating. For example, Richmond Public School District has not approved any homeschool students to participate in their technical programs. Also, my daughter was supposed to be put on the AP exam list and was left off in error. All they told me was, "I'm sorry." So it's unfortunate that I would be forced to collaborate with a school district that's quite frankly inefficient and quite frankly doesn't have their own monitoring or their own school system together, but they want to put more restrictions on me. I think it's quite unfair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Madam, members of the subcommittee, my name is Dr. Michael Huffman, and I'm the Executive Director with the Virginia Assembly of Independent Baptists, and we oppose SB 1031. If this is an issue of proficiency, the senator's correct. There is a lack of proficiency in our education. 20% of high school graduates struggle with reading. 74% of graduates struggle with proficiency in math. These are all from the National Assessment of Educational Progress. 75% of graduates struggle with basic writing skills. 88% of graduates show a lack of proficiency in history. 32% of graduates struggle with science. But all those percentages are kids that go to public schools, not homeschools. Homeschool kids have a national average have always scored higher than those of public education. So since those numbers are accurate, why don't we focus on the inefficiencies of public education instead of putting limitations on those of private and homeschool education? And as a double doctorate and as a professor of constitutional law, I promise you this does infringe on the constitutional rights of the First Amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Grant May. I'm here on behalf of the Family Foundation and a proud homeschool graduate. We oppose Senate Bill 1031 because it seeks to overturn the safeguards in place for faith-based families associated with homeschooling under the notice of intent option. Requiring families to justify their decision to homeschool undermines their freedoms and entangles the government in matters of faith and conscience. We urge this committee to reject Senate Bill 1031 and stand firmly in support of parental rights. Thank you.
Hey, we need to, I'm sorry, but we need to keep decorum in here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, I'm Scott Woodruff, Director of the Legal Department of Homeschool Legal Defense Association. I've represented homeschool families seeking the religious exemption for 25 years. Based on my research, the statute, which was enacted in 1976, before homeschooling existed, was enacted to protect Mennonites and Amish. There are thousands of them in Virginia. It was for their protection, and the statute has functioned very well to protect those families. If this statute is repealed, it will put many people in a position where, based on their conscience, they cannot comply with the government education structure that will be mandated upon them in this bill. Their conscience will not allow them to comply with the government education structure this bill creates. Please think about the Amish and Mennonites. As well, this bill protects all religions. I've represented someone whose religion was witchcraft. I've represented a Muslim. I've represented an earth worshiper person, and I recently represented someone whose religion was Yoruba. This protects all religions, and it prevents a huge number of conflicts between the demands of the state and the demands of one's conscience. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm Melissa Velasquez, Assistant Superintendent with the Department of Education. The department strongly opposes this legislation for the impact that it's going to have on over 6,700 children and families in the Commonwealth.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Corey Stepp, and I'm going to keep it simple. I've spent half my life serving in our nation's military, and I strongly believe in my rights and our freedoms. This bill goes against those freedoms and the rights that I personally fight for every day. I understand that some may say this exemption is flawed or even abused. What I don't understand is how you can put a bill like this into place knowing that it will be hurting the thousands of families who rely on the protections of the current exemption.
Good afternoon, Chairman and subcommittee meeting members. My name is Karis Brooks. I'm a resident of Madison County, representing myself, and I strongly oppose this bill.
All right, so for everybody else, if you could just raise your hand if you oppose the bill, please. That didn't get a chance to speak. Okay, thank you. Okay, Senator Pekarsky, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like the department representative, if they're still here, I'd like to ask a question. Yes. So we've heard a lot about public schools, which have very stringent accountability standards, which this administration has been pushing and talking about for the last 4 years, how every child is should have very high, best quality education, high standards, accountability. And you said that this bill would negatively impact students. I would like to hear what the opinion is as to how they would be negatively impacted.
The opposition to the bill is based on the impact to those 6,700 families who currently have the religious exemption, and that this bill will compel them to continue to interact with the government that violates the tenets of their faith. And many of them do successfully homeschool, private school, or provide tutoring services to their children and are quite successful. But the opposition is based on the impact to these families.
Mr. Chair. But I'm not hearing what that impact is. Having to send a basic update of what they are doing is not exactly interaction.
It is an ongoing, continuous interaction, and I have not seen the substitute. I believe you said there was a substitute that we'll be glad to look at. However, there is an annual interaction, and many times that violates the tenets of certain faiths, such as the Amish community, the Mennonite community, which is quite a community in Virginia for those members.
Mr. Chair, I have a few more.
Yes.
Sorry. I would like to know how 46 other states are able to accomplish this, in your opinion.
Well, it's not an opinion. I haven't researched the 46 other states. Virginia has always been unique that it does and provides to its citizens what they need. This legislation has been in effect, as mentioned, since 1976, and it has been successful. And so it's not a matter of what 46 other states do, it's what Virginia offers to its citizens. And this may be an attractive indication that people move to Virginia for this option.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Pekarsky,
I
please
think-
keep it down. Please
I-
keep it down, otherwise we're gonna have to ask you to leave. I don't want to do that. No, thank you. Senator Pekarsky.
Mr. Chair, question. You said that this has been successful. I'm wondering if you were in the room when you heard me read from the many letters that came in that talked about neglect and abuse and children that were not educated, children that suffered deeply and greatly, and the victims that came forward today. So is it the position of the administration that it is okay for children to suffer like that and receive zero education, and that we are okay with a legal loophole, because that's what this is, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where there is no mandate that a child needs to be educated?
The administration is never in favor of children suffering. However, this is not viewed as children suffering. This is viewed as parents being able to make decisions for their children. And it's not a legal loophole. It's been supported. There are court cases that are in the Code of Virginia that outline the opportunities for school divisions to check on the bona fideness of the exemption, as well as to check to see if the religious exemption is a current position that the parents continue to maintain. And there are Attorney General's opinions on this as well as court cases, so it's not viewed as a legal loophole.
Mr. Chair, my last comment will be, I think it is amazing that we heard so many victim stories, so many that are voiceless, who do not have the opportunity to come speak here. When I brought this bill forward, I had colleagues from the state Senate that came up to me and said, oh yes, I've worked on cases of severe abuse and neglect that have fallen underneath this exemption, and that all we can say is that this is about parental rights. Children have rights as well. These are very basic, as I stated, requirements that we have for our homeschooling community. And I have not heard from a single person as to why this is a burden, personally. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to...
Please be quiet. Please be quiet.
I'm going to move with Senator Locke's. I'm going to move.
You cannot speak out. We're either going to ask you to leave or we're going to put you out. Stop the yelling out.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
Yep.
I'll use Senator Locke's proxy to move to report, and I'll second it with me.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second to recommend reporting. I guess I'm going to say one thing before we actually take that vote. And maybe this is a conversation that can be had over the week, and maybe it can't be. And I'll leave that to folks in the audience, and I'll leave that to Senator Pekarsky. I'm very sympathetic to both sides of this issue. And I guess what I can't wrap my brain around is why there can't be some kind of reporting mechanism to make sure that a kid is safe in getting some level of education. And I'm not saying that what Senator Pekarsky has in the bill is perfect. And I'm willing to be, I guess, convinced otherwise. But it seems to me that it also can't be a black box, because that doesn't seem right either. And it seems like we can have a religious exemption that stays true to what people believe, while also having a kind of modicum, a bare threshold for ensuring the safety of a kid. And I haven't yet heard anybody give me something that they would think is acceptable. And so we can do that later. And so, in lieu of that, I'm going to vote yes. But this is me offering a public, comment to say there's got to be something. And we're not doing that right now. And so this comes up in a week. But I think there has to be some kind of safeguard too. I think that's responsible. And so, having said that, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, Senator Peake and Craig are noes. So that motion recommends to report 3-2 as substituted. Thank you. All right, and so we're gonna go at ease for 2 minutes to let the room clear, and so I can get some water, and then we'll come right back and take Senator Suderline.